Hello everyone, Shirley here, and happy 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft. What better way to celebrate than bringing back one of the best dungeons ever made, the Blackrock Depths, except this time it's a raid, and my oh my, this was not what I was expecting at all. It's actually pretty challenging, so we're going to be looking at all the bosses today. I wouldn't call this a guide per se, but I'm just going to point out a few things, along the way, maybe a little bit of tips and whatnot that we figured out when we were doing this on Heroic last night. But anyway, jumping in on the poll here on Lord Roccor. We just kind of wung this, by the way. We didn't, read into the dungeon journal or do anything like that, so we definitely could have optimized a ton of things, but it is all doable, as long as you're persistent. But getting in on the poll of Roccor here, it's a really long fight. He's got a ton of health. It's just a AoE pad fest, really. The only two mechanics I'd say that you really got to worry about is the little fire slimes that spawn around the room. You just go step on them. That way they're not running into the fire orb spawn things that when he does this, he summons all these adds. They'll be really big, dangerous adds if you're not stepping on all those, so you just want to, squash as many as you can before the adds come out. And then it's just passively cleaving all these down. I could have definitely been in a better AoE spec for this, but it's not that big of a deal. We've got enough passive AoE to kill these things. But other than this, when he reaches full energy, he does his big slam thing that you just saw a few seconds back there. That's the only other mechanic I'd say that you really got to worry about. It does a ton of raid-wide damage, so you definitely want to have a defensive of some kind for each of those casts. And then, yeah, it's pretty much just tank and spank, kill the boss, That's about all I got to say for Lord Roccor, so I'll see you on the next boss. Alright, time for the second boss in BRD. We're going to be hitting Bael'gar here. This fight is a lot more AoE pad, just like the last one, so I mixed up my talents slightly and grabbed Warbreaker for it, just for the fun of it. But on the rip here, we're just going to go in and get started with cooldowns and Bloodlust and all that jazz. There's a couple of things we can do on this boss, this Rockfall cast that he does first here. It's a ton of swirlies, and this is, a lot, actually. These are targeted on players, though, so you could just bait these all on one spot if you wanted to. If you're actually struggling with this, I would just stack up and, rotate around the boss or something as a melee group anyway. And then he summons these boulders around the room that we have to kill to spawn some adds, otherwise they'll blow up in a bit. But one thing to point out, he does do a giant tank frontal, so you really don't want to get in front of him. But we also kind of want to drag him around to help cleave down these pillars and get them all killed, easily with the melee cleaving on them. And then he does this Molten Furnace cast, which is a great big one-shot AoE, so you got to go run and hide behind one of these boulders. You want to keep at least one of them alive before that goes out, so everybody can get to it. And then we want to kill off all the boulder pillars, because he'll spawn more before the next time that goes off. And otherwise, it's just spawn or cleaving down these spawn of Bael'gars. They don't really do anything. They fixate, I think, on a player, but they don't do a ton of damage. So you just passively, cleave these all down and staying out from in front of him to avoid that massive tank one-shot. Yeah, that's about it. It's pretty much rinse repeat at this point. He'll resummon everything, do the rockfall again, and more pad. So, yep, there's Bael'gar. And time for the third boss, Lord Incendius. This is a goofy boss. He does a couple of things, but it's really weird how they overlap in a line. So anyway, on the rip here, he's going to periodically cut off portions of this bridge. There's like 3 sections, I think, that can light up with fire, 2 or 1 at a time like this. Just move out of the fire, of course. It's not super damaging, though, so sometimes you might catch yourself in it for the next mechanic, which is these little flame geysers. He'll summon 2 of them just throughout the entire fight, basically. You can go and kill them and, to stop their cast, their blaze cast, but as soon as you kill them, he'll just resummon 2 more anyway, so it's kind of a moot cause. They can be CC'd, however, so you could just, freezing trap one of them if you got a hunter and ignore it for a while and maybe only kill one of them. But when they die, they do this dying flare cast, so you gotta go stand in the circle and soak it here. And that's what I mean by sometimes you'll be in the fire, because you have to soak the blowing up circle that's in the fire, and as long as you're not in there too long, it's not that bad. It does do a knockback, so make sure you're positioned, you're not gonna get knocked off the bridge. He's just resummons a couple more here instantly. We can go ahead and get some cleave on him as long as the boss is drug around. But, yeah, that's about it. He does one more mechanic here coming up. The spell reflecting to help soak that. This Scorching Wind cast. He'll teleport to the middle of the bridge on either side. So this is where it gets a little sketchy. You gotta soak that, and it's just covered in fire. This is just a knockback, trying to force you off the bridge. It's not super strong, so even on heroic, it's not that big of a deal. Just run against it, and you'll be fine. Anyway, that's Lord Incendius. Alright, time for the fourth boss in the raid. Golem Lord Argelmach, I think. Anyway, he's got all these Arcanotron, Magmatron, these robots around him here. It's a bit of a cleave fight, kinda. You don't want to blow everything on this guy, though, right off the bat, because he just falls over. The real boss fight is these 4 golems around the room. And first things first, you want them to be spread out, because they do more damage if they're next to each other. At least on Heroic anyway, it's probably not wise to stack them all up just to, AoE. They do share health, however, so it doesn't really matter which one you're hitting, but there are a little bit of priorities. You can get them close enough to each other that you can cleave a little bit, but not a ton. But the first thing is the Magmatron here, the guy that I'm hitting. He does a flamethrower attack, and the tank wants to drag him around the room and flamethrower all these little acid pools on the ground. And clean those up just so they're not in the way, but also because he'll do a explosion cast later on that does more damage depending on how many of these things are left. So that's no bueno. You want to be cleaning these up. Other than that, in the corner, the Electron casts Chain Lightning. He just spams it. Oh, this little thing will come out periodically. You'll get this little circle and link you to somebody. You just got to go touch them. Not a huge thing. And then the Arcane Overcharge guy here, you got to soak these orbs as they fall from him. And I believe that it gives you a damage taken increase debuff, so you want to be careful with, soaking too many of these. That Chain Lightning in the corner there, you see him casting. You could just throw up a Spell Reflect, on cooldown, and you're going to catch that thing as a warrior anyway. But you can also interrupt some of the casts, I think, from him. So it's good to have somebody over there on kick duty. But it doesn't really matter what I'm hitting here. We're just swapping around, watching out for the flamethrower. It doesn't do that much damage, so if the tank spins it around to clean on you, it's not that big of a deal. These random lightning pulses go out. You just got to move out of the raid with that. Just does some AoE damage, not a big deal. And other than that, the power generator cast here from the Arcanotron summons all these little orbs that go towards him. We want to be soaking these because they give us a damage done buff increase. So we don't want him to get that, obviously. We'd rather have it. More orbs falling from the sky to soak, getting out of the way of all these acid pools. And there is one more cast I do want to point out. The guy up top, I have no idea what he does. I never went up there to hit him, so I suppose if you're ranged, you could just multi-dot, everything in the room since they share health and get a lot of damage out that way. I can cleave here a little bit because they're super close. I don't know if this is based on a timer or what, or if it's health-based, but the Magmatron will do his big explosion cast that you want to have all these pools cleaned up for, and some defensives rolling for it. Our little link debuff thing here. And just executing the boss. Maybe I missed it and he already did it. I think he already did it. Should have been paying more attention. The Incineration cast. I think this is it here, actually. Yeah, he just blows up and almost one-shots me. Anyway, that's the Golem fight. And the next fight is the 7. The 7 ghosty boys in this room. This boss is such a mess. You can only attack 3 of these guys at any one time, and that's displayed to you by the little yellow rune glowing above their head. So on the rip here, we're going to pull them all together, the 3 that are activated, and get to cleaving on them. They do share health. Each one of them has a separate ability, and while they're active, you can interrupt them, but when they're not, you can't touch them. They're immune and everything. So anytime you can stack them up, you want to be doing that to get as much damage on 3 targets as possible. Doomrel here, this first guy, he summons a bunch of Fel Guards. Then he goes immune here. We just want to cleave down the Fel Guards and interrupt him when possible. He also banishes people randomly for like 30 seconds. You're just out of the fight at that point unless you get dispelled. He also, one of them does this fear thing, which was that green circle around the room. This mechanic, with all the dust around the room, limits range players' vision, I believe. For melee, it doesn't really do anything. And then Angerel on the left here that we're hitting, he Bladestorms periodically, which does that giant AoE around him. And I'm pretty sure that chases the tank around, so one of your tanks that has threat on him could run that out of the raid, so it's not just spinning, you know, on the whole raid, doing a ton of damage here. But yeah, we're hitting him and Gloomrail, so I'm pretty sure he ran out to spin there in the back. You can see it in the corner. Hate Rel is up over on this side. We're going to be cleaving him for a bit, kicking these magma bolts. He summons these fire elementals. These are actually pretty dangerous, so when they're up, you want to be interrupting that fire nova. One went off right there. You can see the damage it does. You want to kill those as fast as possible. And one of these bosses summons this ice thing on you. You just want to go drop these puddles, you know, in the corners of the room so they're not taking damage on the whole raid. Here's the big green fear circle again. And then periodically these ice circles will go out on the entire raid and root you for a couple of seconds. So everybody's got to spread out and drop these things in a good spot. And then it's back to cleaving the boss. That's about it. There's a Sunder Armor that goes on the tanks, so they have to be careful. But as far as other mechanics, there's a Shadow Bolt Volley. You can, just reflect when you can't interrupt these. Try to move out of the Bladestorms, as obviously, but they don't hurt that much. So if you've got a defensive running, it's not that big of a deal to stand in it, especially if you're getting like triple cleave with cooldowns or something. But anyway, there is the 7. Alright, time for another AoE Bonanza boss. This is General Angerforge. Basically this great big room with all the pillars, we gotta run around and do a gauntlet and kill a ton of trash. So I actually went in my Mythic Plus spec for this boss because there's just so much, pad and adds. Plus the extra CC from Shockwave is nice because most of the mobs in here can be stunned. We start in this corner of the room here and have to work our way around, hiding behind these pillars, avoiding these cannon barrages, working our way over to this right side, and then we're going to use all of our cooldowns here on this first great big pack, prioritizing the medic and the officer. The officer does this flame ring cast that can actually one-shot you. It's pretty dangerous, so you definitely want to move out of that. Otherwise, we're just cleaving everything down, killing them. Individually, these mobs aren't super dangerous, except for the rogues that are invisible around the room, and as you walk around the room, they'll just periodically pop out of stealth, fixate on somebody, and then start chasing them and stabbing them. The rogues do a ton of damage, actually, so you want to be dragging the rogues. You can see that little line there off one of the fixates. You want to be dragging these guys into the death ball of your melee so they all get blendered down. They don't have a ton of health, so as long as you're, watching and paying attention to them, they all die pretty quickly. Making our way up to this first Harbinger of Flame up here. We got to get the torch on either side of the room to kill these guys. That was back over by that officer, so we're doing that. We click on the little brazier to progress the fight forward, and moving off to the far side of the room here now. Now we're waiting for these mole machines to spawn. This happens a couple of times throughout the fight. It just summons a bunch of adds as long as these sappers. And these guys will fixate and they explode, so you really want to use Ring of Peace, stuns, knockbacks, just to keep them off of you to keep your raid damage down to a minimum. And then killing all these rogues as fast as possible. Like I said earlier, most of this stuff can be CC'd, so, don't be afraid to burn stuns and everything on them. So this Flame Shaper guy in the back here, we're ignoring for the moment because we need to go get the torch first before we can deal with him. So we just got to avoid the cannon barrages and the fire swirls on the floor and work our way up to this other side of the room. Trying to get this last rogue down here before our group moves up so we're not, getting spread out. You do want to make sure that your tank gets in here first so you're not ripping thread on all these dudes. But, yeah, we're going to get on this second officer here and just cleaving everything down with Blade Storm. Watching out for his fire thing. We killed him fast enough that he didn't get his fire ring off. And now we move up to this next set of archers or gunmen, whatever, the dragoons. You can actually just get behind a pillar here and line of sight all these guys to get them nice and clumped. Would be a lot better than just hiding around the wall there like what we were doing. But these guys all go down pretty easily. They're not very dangerous. Now we get back around to the front of the room on this side for our last big mosh pit and officer. Running out of the Ring of Fire and back in. The Shatter Armor cast the officers do on the tanks are permanent throughout this fight too, so you want to be spreading those around, otherwise you'll get too many debuffs on one tank and they'll just die. Down our last Flame Keeper here. Now we can take the torch back up to the brazier. There is one last Harbinger of Flame in the middle of the room that just keeps ticking periodic damage throughout until the end of the fight. So you do want to be, relatively quick about this. Otherwise, your raid's just going to rot out. We were just waiting for our tank to get up here before hitting this guy. And we ignite the last brazier, which drops the fire in the middle of the room, and we can finally go attack General Angerforge himself. He doesn't have a ton of HP like all the other bosses in here, because most of the time spent is on the gauntlet. But we're just going to cleave down the adds around him. They don't live very long, and then it's on to Angerforge. He spawns these bombs. You could clear these with, an immunity or something, but you can just leave them too. You just don't want to touch them because they explode for raid-wide damage, I think. We just opted to ignore him. And he summons more adds periodically, which we can cleave down. And that's pretty much it. The only thing really to worry about in this last phase is just rotting out from this last Harbinger doing its periodic, damage. So it just killed the boss before he wipes the raid. And that is General Angerforge. Time for the penultimate boss of BRD, Ambassador Flamelash. There's a lot of damage going out in this fight, so you really want to be, go into it with a game plan in mind, I'd say. So on the pull here, we're going to pull the boss into the middle of the room or hallway that we're in here. Use our Bloodlust and, start smacking away. You could save your Bloodlust for like the pseudo intermission phase, but we opted to use it on the pull here. And the first thing he's going to do is summon these 3 Firestarter Elementals. Basically, they'll just pick a random target, fixate them, and chase them. And when you touch them, they blow up and make this big circle. So ideally, you would drag them out of the raid and then touch the one that's fixated on you to get it to explode, and then you just walk out of it. The boss does this cleave. He also summons this Flame Walker ad on the side there that does an explosion with fall-off damage. So we're going to get it up by the boss. They both do a frontal. And just cleave it down. It's not super dangerous. The boss does this cremate cast a few times throughout the fights. You want to be standing in this and help soak this damage because it splits. If your tank's blowing a bunch of CDs, they can solo it, but for like the first one, we were standing it and soaking it. The Firewalker explodes when he dies, so you want to make sure you're not too low. And now we get into the intermission phase. This is the hard part of the fight. All these little ads will spawn around the room with these 2 portal anchors per section that they're in, and you want to kill these portal anchors because they're summoning these spirits and they do pulsing damage when you down one of them, so you want to be killing them relatively evenly. And these little ads, every time they cast, they blow up or kill themselves, and I can't say that on YouTube. And it buffs the boss because he'll do periodic damage, so all the interrupts and stuns you can throw on these little guys you really want to do. So we opted to spread out around the room to get all these, as interrupted as possible rather than moving as a big pack. It seemed to work at the end for us anyway. And then we rotate around to get all these last anchors down. The boss does do the big soak circle during this portion, so this is where we threw a bunch of DRs on our tank and had them deal with it, rather than the raid having to run back in and help soak that. He does summon this next ad here that does a super E cast. We're just moving out for that, cleaving him down, and from this point on, it's just rinse repeat. We just gotta get him down before, you run out of cooldowns basically to deal with everything. And that is Ambassador Flamelash. And last but not least, the big man himself, Emperor Dagran Thaurissan, and Moira Bronzebeard here. So this boss does a ton of things, actually. It's kind of neat. We're going to go ahead and pull with Lust and use all of our CDs here and try to get Moira down as fast as possible because she does a few casts that we just don't want to deal with. I don't think there's like a hidden achievement for keeping her alive or anything like in Classic. But yeah, we're going to rip this on the pull, and the boss will periodically summon these fire swirls and also shoot out those lines. You just avoid these things. And then Moira will do this Shattering Scream cast. It's just, find the safe wedge and don't get hit by this thing. As a warrior, if you get called out in a bad spot, you can spell reflect one tick of it, actually. So that's kind of neat little tech. As we get to the first intermission portion of the fight, the fire up on the top platforms will go away and it'll summon these 4 ambassador ads. And we want to get these down as fast as possible because they'll be casting Pyroblasts, which do damage. But also, you don't want to kick them immediately. You want to kick them at the end of their cast because after they cast a set number of Pyroblasts, they'll do a big end the world cast. I don't remember what it's called. Basically, if it goes off, it kills the entire raid. So you want to split up your DPS and go deal with those. You can just leap up there like you saw me do as a warrior, or any class that has any good mobility like that. A feral druid could probably pounce up there as well. And as we jump back down, we go ahead and finish off Moira, and that empowers Dagran here, but it doesn't change a whole lot until he hits 70% health, and then that'll go into phase 2 of the fight. We're just avoiding these Hand of Thaurissan casts. Now that he's empowered, though, they spawn these lava orbs. These are really dangerous, and we didn't know how to deal with them for quite a while. Basically, we found, so this is phase 2, he'll do this cast here, just run away from this fall-off damage. But basically, when you get those orbs on you, you can run away, and then right when the cast goes off, you can sidestep it and avoid it completely. It wasn't apparent right away, so we were just, using DRs and face tanking them, which is you can do, but it's pretty sketch. Now he'll do this big AoE soak cast that we want everybody in the raid to stack up in and help split that damage, and it leaves the lava pool on the ground there. And then we're going to rotate to the other side here. The idea was just to save as much room in the hallway as possible, so we're just going to plant these, firebomb casts down here and then work our way up the chamber back to the throne side. And periodically he'll summon these adds, the guard and these destroyers. We're just cleaving them down, kicking the Fire Nova casts because that does do quite a bit of damage. But otherwise we're just focusing on the boss here, at least I am. These Hand of Thaurissan casts go off once again. It's just playing the Bullet Storm, avoiding all of these. And then these swirls go out after a few of them. We really want to soak all these before they hit the ground, otherwise it does massive raid AoE. Spawns a bunch of these little fireling adds, they just instantly explode, they're not really a big deal. And as we rinse, repeat, and get him down into execute phase here, have the next soak cast go out. And it's basically just, kill him before he kills you, or the room fills up. Running out for this fall-off damage here. Cleaving down the fire elementals that spawn. Unfortunately, I get knocked by one of them in a really bad spot somehow, and I go down here. So don't die like I did. But otherwise, that's Dagran Thaurissan. I'll let the rest of the video play out here. So even if you don't have everybody alive, you can still survive this soak cast with some personals. Yeah, if you have any questions, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.